Alright guys, so this is the announcement we've all been waiting for. AFL Evolution 2, the release date, it's official. The 23rd of April 2020 is when we're going to get to see this game. So in about 6 or 7 weeks time, I think that is. It was announced by True Blue and Wicked Witch up on the AFL Evo Facebook page. They put up this whole spiel on their Facebook page, you know, a lot of writing where they say a lot without saying anything really. Not really any information, you know, to get you too excited. Nothing about features or anything like that. We do get the release date though, which is obviously the most important thing. We do also get confirmed the new cover art. Obviously, previously it was announced that West Coast and Collingwood players were going to feature on the cover of the game, which would make no sense. So that's definitely one of the questions I had. Would they change that? It makes sense they would change it. We've got Patrick Cripps now as the new cover athlete, which is okay. He was previously on the cover for Evo 1, and as someone else pointed out, there was also a Carlton player on the cover of AFL Wii. So someone like Carlton, obviously, you know, me being a Freo fan, I would have preferred Nathan Fyfe, the recent Brownlow medalist, makes a bit more sense. But this is fine. At least this is better than, you know, West Coast and Collingwood players in 2020. That wouldn't make any sense at all. So new cover athlete. What else have we got here? Nothing much, as I said. We know it was on the Unreal Engine, we already knew that. It'll be interesting to see what changes that makes to the game. They only say here, including enhanced graphics and multiplayer modes. I mean, that's kind of interesting when you think about it. What are multiplayer modes outside of just, you know, multiplayer, right? I mean, every AFL game's had multiplayer. So is there something unique there they're going to reveal? Is there something, you know, different that we haven't had before in an AFL game? Probably not. I'm probably reading too much into it, as I do, but you know, that could be interesting. They talk about undergoing an extensive process to recreate likeness of the game's elite level stars in the AFL and AFLW competitions. That's going to be interesting to see what extent that really goes to, because in the previous game we know that key players looked great. They looked, you know, almost photorealistic, exactly like their real life counterparts. But for the rest of the league, it was kind of hit and miss. Some looked really good, others didn't. Obviously not all players were face scanned in the previous game, so we kind of had ones that looked kind of like themselves and not so much in others. In regards to Evo 2, what kind of little tidbits we've seen and heard, mostly from outside sources, not from them because they haven't told us anything, but mostly from outside sources, it's kind of indicated that every single player on team lists was face scanned or their photos were taken. But the question is, does that necessarily mean they're all going to have photorealistic looks? Because something that was pointed out in an interview with Wicked Witch that came out like last week or something, it basically said that like not every single player gets dedicated the same amount of time to, you know, putting their likeness into the game. So even though every player was photographed and face scanned, the actual result of that may be that only the star players or the top level players of each club will, you know, look exactly like themselves, and the rest is just the photos were taken as kind of reference for them to model their player models and player characters or the players on, if that makes sense. It's ambitious and it's hopeful to think that every single player will look photorealistic, but I don't know if that's the case. I think we will get the star players, and more so than we had in Evo 1. I just think we'll get in Evo 2, we'll get more face scanned players who look almost exactly like themselves. It'll be like a kind of incremental process. With each new game we'll get a bunch more and a bunch more. So I think we'll have more photorealistic looking players in the game this time around than we did in Evo 1, but I don't think we'll get every single player. That'd be nice, but I don't think that's the case. It is kind of one of those press releases where they use a lot of buzzwords and say a lot without saying anything specific. You know, they say all these things that you're like, oh, that's, you know, a word, but it doesn't mean anything. Like, you know, when they talk about, oh, better graphics and multiplayer modes, and it's like, yep, those are video game words. It doesn't necessarily mean anything. So we don't know anything really specific. But we know a release date, and that's better than nothing, as I said. They talk about the new commentators, Anthony Hudson, Gary Lyon. We knew that previously. That in and of itself, I think, will be better. I think we've had Dennis Cometti for so long that, I mean, even when you played AFL Evo 1, he was just kind of rehashing the same lines he had since like AFL Premiership 2005. So like, I think it will be just a breath of fresh air, just like turning on the game, playing the game, and hearing two new voices, even though Gary Lyon, I think, did a game back in like 2003 or something. But Hutto and Gary Lyon will be like two new voices, and that in and of itself will just make the game feel very fresh. You know, when you hear Dennis repeating those same old lines, it feels just like very dated. So new commentators will definitely help. This isn't new information now, but I think it's going to be a positive for the game. The one piece of new information that we do get is they talk about 16 venues, AFL venues, 16 stadiums in the game. We already knew about Mars Stadium. We already knew about TIO Traeger or Traeger Park. I think it's Traeger. Somebody had a go at me about that last time, but I think it's Traeger. I don't know. But that one, Mars Stadium and Blundstone Arena, we already knew they will be added to the game. We'd already seen screenshots on those. But the big one here is Jiangwan Stadium in Shanghai, China. We didn't know that was going to be in the game, so that's a bit of new information they've kind of buried in all this text here. It's one of those things where it's like, is that a wise use of resources? I mean, personally, I would prefer they spent time putting in like Icon Park and, you know, Freo Oval, those ones that can be used for Marsh games and AFLW games. Not that I play AFLW, but if I did, you know, to have those other grounds would be kind of better. The fact that they put that in there at all is a positive, because I know there were some people who were criticizing them for it not being in the game. You can imagine how pissed they were after they spent like all that time putting in Jiangwan Stadium, and then for the AFL to say that game's not going ahead now. The fact that it's in the game, credit to Wicked Witch for putting it in the game, whether they did during this recent delay period or whether it was already in there and they just didn't reveal it. Yeah, it'll be a nice little novelty value type thing. We knew about the VFL, SANFL, Waffle, NEFL, NAB League competitions. We knew about all that. They do say we're going to get updates in the coming weeks. So hopefully we're going to start to see some more screenshots, gameplay footage especially. They do talk vaguely about the gameplay and how it's improved. We'll see how much of that is just them kind of using the same old lines or if it is genuinely improved. And then on from that, I want to see what new features they've added to the game. I think we're also going to get a reveal time of that. We've got like 6 or 7 weeks now until release. So it gives them an opportunity where they can actually build up to it and start, you know, releasing new footage and new information incrementally and just building up to it and build the anticipation and excitement. Which is something they haven't done in the past. But I think as well, we also saw, if you read that interview, I might link it in the description maybe if I remember, but if you read that interview with Wicked Witch that came out last week, they talked about adding new features and game modes, but also adding 2 new features to the game in this recent period while the game was delayed that they wouldn't have otherwise added to the game at all. The big question is, you know, what is that? And are we going to get a reveal of those kind of features in the coming weeks? But that's about it. We've got the release date, the 23rd of April. Finally, we have a concrete date. We know when it's going to be out. And yeah, I'm pretty excited, especially since we don't even know how many AFL games there's going to be this season. What the hell's going to happen there? We don't know, but we're going to have some video game footy, some new video game footy, finally, a year after it should have released. But you know what? It might work out pretty well, because we might not have any real footy. We're going to have a brand new game that's going to be pretty fun, I think. So finally some news, and look forward to more news in the coming weeks.